Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am so excited for today's conversation, what we got going on today. Today, I am talking to the team behind SimWin's Sports, the first AI fantasy sports league, though there's a lot to this, which we're going to get into. I am sitting down with the best people I could imagine to speak to this. We've got David Ortiz, not that one, founder and CEO of SimWin. We have Tom Goedde, who is the president and CMO, and we've got JY, the CTO, because I can't pronounce his French name properly, so we're calling him JY. Hello, y'all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I can't wait to dive in and for people to hear a little bit more about what y'all have been building, because it's really cool, really interesting, very up my alley. I'm a football fan, so I want to tell folks all about it. But first, if people have been enjoying this content, we got a lot more great stuff coming out this year on the Immutable channel. So please do subscribe, like, comment. We love hearing from you. Want to know what you think about SimWin Sports. So head on over there in the comment section. All right, let's begin, guys. I think just to start, and whoever wants to take it, maybe David, if you want to give it to us, just like at a high level, explain what SimWin is for folks.
Cool. So at a high level, SimWin is an AI sports league, meaning we have live sporting events happening 24/7, 365. And the reason for that is we want people to be able to do fantasy sports any time of day they want to. People have all kinds of hobbies, but fantasy sports is based on live sports. You have to have live sports for that to happen. We've built a very safe AI sports league that gives people the chance to, have that competition anytime they want. So the way the interaction works is we have some of the most amazing owners in the world, that own the actual team. So think about it like an NFL or an NBA, 32 teams. And so you're watching those games from those competitors, and they're the ones owning the teams. So you're able to watch their teams, but you're then able to do around their teams playing and competing. You're able to draft your fantasy team for the day. You can be the one owning the players. So you can own an NFT player. Every one of those players that's sitting on their teams are players that you will have purchased, and you invest in their growth and development and get the upside and the yield from them performing well. So you really are that player's agent.
So how did the team ownership, how do you select owners? How do people get involved on that side of things?
Yeah, so we just were fortunate to have a great network for years and years. Myself and Tom have been in sports game development and marketing and fantasy sports, and we've just been fortunate to meet and know a lot of Hall of Fame athletes and up-and-coming athletes and people who are really interesting people in the Web3 space. I mean, it's amazing lists. Magic Johnson, Jerry Rice, Marshall Faulk, Tracy McGrady, LaMelo Ball, Emmanuel Acho, Mike Singletary, Anna Moko owns a team, Dr. Jen Welter, the first woman ever coached in the NFL, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Shane Mosley, Penny Hardaway. I don't want to leave anyone out, but it's a lot. We looked at people who had either had experience running a team, had experience being like an anchor, coach, and an owner, and those are the type of people we wanted to, because we knew going into this, because it's AI based, we wanted to have real credibility, and that was one of the ways that we sought to gain credibility is bring credible people around.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing the roster that you just listed off. Like the folks you have involved in this game is incredibly impressive, and I mean fantasy sports has just become such a huge industry in and of itself. Like I love this concept of using AI to just make it year round. I mean I love it and I hate it. As somebody who has a husband who is I have to get him to put his phone away at dinner from just streaming sports. I don't necessarily love that we're now about to make this a year-round phenomenon. But I love it conceptually. I understand why it's a really cool concept. How do you ensure fairness? Like how do you make sure that the games are fair and the algorithms work properly so that this isn't a rigged league essentially?
Yeah, well, it's actually pretty cool what we do. It starts by us recording, even how they build their teams. It starts by us having these teams, all the players initially, we put them all in all kinds of different rosters and had these teams playing against each other. And then we're filming and recording games so that when they went and drafted the players for these teams, the 32 owners, they were looking at footage of these players as opposed to having a list of, well, this guy's good and this guy's bad. Like it wasn't that. It's exactly what you have to do if you're building a real NFL or NBA roster. You have to go through and watch these players perform. So we record all this footage. They looked at these players. They decided who they wanted. And then once they went through a draft, like they would draft any NFL or NBA team, that's how we built it out. From there, the fairness comes in is that the player lands on that team and they're able to influence the growth and development of that player through different training and different things. And then the fan who ultimately owns that player is able to influence the growth of that player as well. So it's very much like, we're trying our best to kind of mimic reality where, real human athlete is in the space, but it's a digital human athlete. And there's the influence that the club has on them and the influence that the management team around the player has on.
It's a huge undertaking. So if I'm understanding this right, and obviously anybody feel free to jump in on any of this, like, have you fed an algorithm, information about these players, and then the information that the algorithm is interpreting is changing as, individuals in the management teams are acting upon it. So it's constantly always updated, and then these algorithms are playing against each other according to like randomized simulations.
That's a good way to look at it. I mean, I'll without giving you all of our secrets, but also to finish addressing your question about, fair play. The biggest thing is that there's always human input from the perspective of, the owners or their coaches that they've designated. Once they've put their team together, they're setting this play strategy, what plays do they want their team to call in 1st and 10 and 3rd and long, and all these different things. And they also have the ability to ultimately call the plays live. And then the rest of it, the AI goes and they compete. So there's no way for someone to manipulate or game the system, right? There's no, oops, I accidentally slipped, and I slipped my finger, or got tripped out of bounds or whatever. Like, it's all based on the AI versus the AI, so it keeps it very fair. But there's a human component where they're having influence on the outcome as well.
Talk a little bit more about that human intervention piece. And help me understand the breakdown between the owner's intervention and then the individual, fantasy participants' intervention, assuming they both have that intervention.
Sure. So the owners are really the only ones that have any influence over the team's strategy and what they do on a game-by-game basis. They're the ones going through our thousands of plays, picking what plays, what style of offense they want to run, how are they going to maximize their personnel, who are they going to trade, and all these different things. And do they need a new quarterback next year? And it might be your quarterback that you own as a fan that you've been developing, ready for your shot to become the quarterback of that team. The fan has the opportunity to buy a player and influence the growth and development of that player so that their player ultimately makes it to the big time and on a roster. And then, they'll have windows to be able to continue to improve that player. And it's not a system where they're able to just come out and say, all right, I'm going to max my player out. Let me just drop some money. It's a much more sophisticated process than that, so that we see a nice balance of talent throughout the league. But you certainly are going to get the feeling, if you're the player agent of an athlete that's on the team, is I've made it. And now that I've made it, I want to stay at the top for as long as possible before, the natural things that happen when, human athletes can't play forever. Neither will your digital athlete either.
So I grew up in a household with a brother who loved Madden. And my favorite part of Madden was when you would have a player and then you I forget what mode it was, but you'd be in their apartment and then they'd get invited to audition for a movie. And then you'd have to run lines with the character before your audition for the movie. And as a girl, I was like, that's my favorite part of this. So speak a little bit more to what are the things you're doing to elevate your player and keep them at the top?
So much of what we're going to do right now with the players, really, it is about what they do on the field as opposed to off the field. But there are things we're starting to do in the background for story and things like that. But the core thing that you're driving is their ability to grow and develop. And so we'll have these training gyms where you're able to basically buy different things to improve the player. So different training drills, different supplements, different things that actually allow the player to improve. And JY, you want to talk about this a little bit too, man? I know JY is really passionate about this space too.
Yeah, it's you're describing it so well. Even I find myself listening to you, and I've heard this before, but I'm like, oh, he's really good at this.
I want to play. I want to participate.
Yeah,
I would probably frame that.
The training minigame is awesome because you actually get to participate and make decisions on how you're developing your players. There's all kinds of consumables, as they are called, in the video game industry that your players can take in order to either keep training longer, but you also run the risk of overtraining them. And every time you interact with them, that influences their overall progression, right? You've trained someone for so long, they're playing in a couple hours. Power's not the same. Guy is tired. What are you going to do? It really generates a fun economy to play in that actually makes sense. David even had a plan around having some celebrity trainers that make a difference. The ability of consumers to find or rent a gym so that their athlete can be trained on specific specialty stations. I mean, it's great because it gives such a rich environment compared to some of the things that are out there. he's absolutely right. I am passionate about it. I think it's awesome.
I'm interested in that piece you said of just like you can actually overwork them, or I don't know if that puts a player at risk of injury, if that's something, a component that comes into all this. But that's interesting to me because it does feel like that's a preventative measure in place. So it's not just like a pay to win dynamic where you have to be strategic about how you're training them. You can't just throw a lot of money at a lot of things and give them all the boosters and expect that that's going to make you the best player.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to that, we have a variety of different types of cards that you're going to purchase that give you the ability to train something. Mm-hmm. So it's not just everything's available all the time. You actually have to get the item that you need and then apply that item. And some of them last for a period of time and some of them have more permanent effects. We've been making games for so long that with this, it wasn't like, oh, this would be a cool way to like make a buck. It's like, this is something that we hope people have a really good time doing and they actually feel a sense of accomplishment when there's some challenge to seeing a player get to a certain level.
And the celebrity component is really appealing because the fun of like, oh my gosh, I want this person to draft my player. I want to be on this person's team, or like, oh my gosh, I was such a Magic Johnson fan. Like, if my player could get on their team, like that does add some magic, no pun intended, if we're talking about Magic Johnson, to to the dynamic here where in addition to wanting your player to be good for any financial reward or whatever else, there's sort of a social validation piece to this as well that I imagine comes into play.
Yeah, no, I think there's all kinds of cool layers. And, what we want to do starts off with, with all of these things, there's a narrative that's in your head about what it means to be a pro. And then once your player actually becomes a pro and you're, kind of vicariously living through that, then you're actually seeing what it's like. And then you go from just being happy to be there to you wanting to become the next legend, right? And so I think that's going to be the cool thing for the fans. There is all these things like the Magic Johnsons, the Allen Iversons, and Mike Singletary's and Marshall Falk's like, I want my guy to throw a pass to Jerry Rice, or, I want my lineman to block him for Marshall Falk. But then ultimately you're like, okay, but now I want to become the next Marshall Falk. And totally. I think that's what's cool about this opportunity is some people will get to that level.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the blockchain component of this in just a minute. But my last question while we're talking about these big names is you said you had relationships there. So obviously these are pre-existing relationships for y'all and that helps. but what was it that really drew them to this idea? Why did folks want to get involved and own these teams?
The modern athlete is so much more dynamic than it was back in the day. These are business people from the time they get into the league. And now with NIL, these people are being trained in high school, literally for millions and millions of dollars. So they are inherently business people as they are coming up through the ranks. And, they understand the sports universe and how it operates, sponsorships and streaming deals and team ownership and profit sharing and all those things. And so we provide a complete league, a complete ecosystem that they're already familiar with. So it's very easy to get their heads around what the opportunity is. And then you layer in the new stuff like Web3 technologies and distributed ownership and all those things. And it's clearly a groundbreaking opportunity. And, that's the way we've been able to leverage relationships that we've had for a really long time and get such big names involved.
Yeah. Tom, you came from DraftKings. I'm curious to hear you elaborate a little bit more. I mean, you're starting to get into it in that answer there, but like what about maybe your experience at DraftKings made you really excited about this opportunity? And do you see a world where something like this, like an AI league or fantasy sports on an AI league could be as big as fantasy sports is today? I mean, it's obviously a huge market.
Sure. The opportunity is huge, not necessarily because, we're going to change the way sports operate, but more because it's readily available as an on-demand type experience like Netflix and Hulu and all those other things. So we're not trying to replace the NFL. We just want to be available on demand. So now you're taking away the time zone element of regionalized sports, bringing their stars in and cross-pollinating back and forth between territories and sports. It's a pretty exciting opportunity.
All right, well, let's talk about the blockchain piece of this. So talk about where NFTs and tokens come into this whole picture. Maybe let's just start there.
Well, I'll start with the NFT, and then I'm going to toss it over to JY. The main NFT, the NFT that the main NFT for us is the player ownership. So the players themselves are NFT, and so we make those players available. You don't really know who you're going to get. It's like opening a pack of trading cards, and you get your player, and you see where they're at, where their base skill is at. Now you own that player. But if you're the owner of that player, you're really encouraged to hang on to the player because you actually gain value for the player based on that player being on someone's roster. So you're actually paid out your salary for your player in token. You get a player, and then your player gets drafted onto one of these, athletes teams or one of these club teams. And now you're getting your salary in token, which is cool. And then as your player becomes more popular, your player's drafted more often in fantasy sport, you're getting additional upside for your player based on your player's popularity. So that's probably the coolest thing with the NFT.
I would say also that it's been an absolute pleasure working with the Immutable team. One of the things we are going to do is make Passport the first thing that you see for crypto on SimWin. Passport does such a good job bringing the possibility of participating in this to such a wider audience. There's a ton of really useful features and methods that are available to us that really accelerate the speed at which we can do some of the innovative things we have in mind, as opposed to spend most of our time in plumbing and debugging. And so I can see why the Immutable platform is attractive for game makers. It certainly is for us.
That's great. And how do you think about balancing the tokenomics here? So you get tokens for holding a player that's on a roster. I'm assuming then, of course, those tokens also then trade on the open market. Are there other ways that folks can acquire tokens? Or is that, other than purchasing them on the market, on the secondary, or receiving them as payment for your player?
This is one of the things David knows I'm the most passionate about. Like when you look at the SimWin universe itself, what I'm really thrilled about is that it is an actual economy. It actually makes sense that you would go on our joint Immutable SimWin marketplace and be like, I need to find myself a 2% power card for my quarterback. Otherwise, they're not actually going to get drafted by this team. Like that's the kind of stuff you would be doing regardless. And if you were playing any game like this and it didn't have these kinds of mechanics, you'd think that we missed on something. So it's a match made in heaven that the SimWin world is evolving this way, and that it just maps out to actual tokenomics, natural exchanges, and natural economic activity. I personally am thrilled about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you want it to be. You want it to be organic, as opposed to, I think, in super early days of crypto, we were all just so excited about the tech that it's sort of you're forcing things. And where we need to evolve to is exactly here, right? Which is that it's just the organic way to do something, and it happens to be enhanced by the fact that there's this blockchain underpinning it.
Yes, and in your team, Immutable really gets that. Like, I'm not saying that, I'm saying that just because it's true. And so instead of us having to convince a blockchain company that's really fintech oriented, and how many blockchain companies are out there, and when you look at the technology, it's really fintech. A lot of people want to participate in gaming, but don't really understand what the dynamics are. So for us, it's been really good to be able to work with Immutable also as a sounding board to see what Immutable has seen before. I mean, you guys have made a game with Illuvium that's just fantastic. And so to us, that's the bar, right? We look forward to having your technology on our platform as a result.
Fantastic. All right. Well, final question. Where should folks go to learn more? When do things go live? Like when does the season start, I guess? Is that the way to frame the question? And where should people go?
Yeah, you got it. For more information, it's www.simwinsports.com, and all the usual socials is SimWin Sports. We're in an active beta right now, so we have 8 games running a day. And then we do one Wednesday night feature game on Wednesday evenings, East Coast time, here in the U.S., New York time, where David and I join some of our fun ownerships and call game more in a podcast style than sort of Troy Aikman style. So we have a great time with that. But yeah, jump in contests any day. Come check us out at SimWinSports.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This was a really fun conversation. Again, come from a big football family, so it's fun to be able to talk football here a little bit. And we wish you the best of luck. Excited to have you on sometime in the future and see how progress is going. And again, if you did like this interview, please do like it, comment below, subscribe to the channel. We got all sorts of great conversations coming out this year, so you don't want to miss a thing. See you next time.